So former President Donald Trump was booed at a rally in Alabama when he told the crowd, you should probably get vaccinated. Watch.
3 days less than 9 months, and it's great. And you know what? I believe totally in your freedoms. I do. You got to do what you have to do. But I recommend take the vaccines. I did it. It's good. Take the vaccines. But no, that's okay. That's all right. You got your freedoms. But I happen to take the vaccine. If it doesn't work, you'll be the first to know, okay? I'll call up Alabama and say, hey, you know what? But it is working. But you do have your freedoms. You have to maintain that. You have to maintain that. And you got to get your kids back to school.
So, I mean, listen, credit where it's due. He's correct for saying this. He should have said this earlier on, and he should have been saying it repeatedly all the time to really get his people on the same page, because now there is this monster that's been created, this anti-vaccine monster where they're convinced that COVID is a hoax or the vaccine is a plot, and there's a whole spectrum of vaccine hesitancy and denialism, and some people are more reasonable than others, but ultimately they end up in the same wrong, bad place. Even Trump recognizes that's not good, and there are negative consequences to this. And listen, a lot of people are dropping dead as a result of it. You got to keep it real. And so credit to him for saying it, but you saw the reaction. And what you actually got a good sense there of why Trump is good at what he does with these rallies, because he really can sense a crowd well, better than most people. And so he senses the slight boos, the initial pushback, and he immediately retreats to like, listen, you got your freedoms, you do what you want. All I'm telling you is I ended up taking the vaccines, and I think they're good because I did it. I did it. I'll be the first one to tell you if they're not good. So he was able to make the point and then sort of smooth it out a little bit, take off the rough edges, try to keep the crowd with him. So that was actually an interesting lesson in how to feel out a crowd and move forward in a way that's more palatable and more acceptable. And that's why he ended up becoming president of the United States, because he has that ability. But there's a reason why Trump is saying this. Guys, Trump is saying this. Throw up the next thing here, Chuck, because this is really interesting and terrible. Daily Beast says, conservative radio host who mocked vaccines dies of COVID-19. Phil Valentine derided coronavirus vaccines, but he changed his tune when he was hospitalized. So, listen, I take no pleasure in talking about this and saying this. I'm not a partisan hack. I don't take glee in the death of people who disagree with me politically. That'd be monstrous if I did that. The guy was very stridently anti-vaccine. It was a regular theme on his show. And then when he got it and when he realized how terrible it was, when he was in the hospital, he was like, I fucked up. I should have gotten the vaccine. I was dead wrong. And then there's actually, guys, there's another conservative radio host by the name of Dick Farrell in Florida. And he also got COVID and died. And he also was massively anti-vaccine. And then he's another one who, when he was in the hospital, he was like, I fucked up. I was wrong. I should have gotten the vaccine. And I mean, in a weird way, credit, right, for them to admit on their deathbed, like, oh, I really fucked up. But like, people need to listen to this warning and take it seriously. They do. And I don't, you get the sense that it's just not going to happen with some people. There's some percentage of the population that are just going to be like, nope. And to be clear, it's not just the case that there's vaccine hesitancy on the right. I don't want to make this a partisan thing. These two happen to be, conservative radio hosts, and Trump's audience in Alabama was, of course, a Republican audience and a pro-Trump audience. So there is a lot of it on the right. But there is also a lot of it on the left, and it stems from an instinct that I think is perfectly reasonable and fair and based on evidence, which is that big pharma are scam artists and they're corrupt and they rip you off and they buy the government and all these terrible things. I agree with all of that. But that doesn't mean antibiotics don't work. And that doesn't mean that the vaccines don't work. Why is there no more polio or very little polio? Well, what about smallpox, measles? Let's go down the list of all the things that vaccines have eradicated or nearly eradicated. Why is that not around anymore? Because the vaccines work. They work. And so with the COVID one, against the original variant, it was phenomenally successful. Against this new variant, the evidence as of right now is that it's still successful, but breakthrough cases are becoming more and more common. So, but you still get a lot of protection, especially from hospitalization and death. It's over 90% effective when it comes to fighting hospitalization and death, which is a very, very important number. Depending on which vaccine you look at, of course, they range from 90% to like 98% effective over that line. So it's important. I'm happy Trump said this. He should have said this earlier on. He should have gotten his people on board earlier on, because now you get the sense that, this monster has been created. And then, of course, you're going to have right-wingers come along who now denounce Trump for not being pure enough and being right-wing enough and not being anti-vaccine enough or whatever. Guys, there's a reason why the elites were lined up down the block to get the damn thing. And there's a reason why the developing countries are getting screwed right now. And the pharmaceutical companies are trying to protect their patents. They don't want generic vaccines to be created all over the world so we can get out of this pandemic faster. They're trying to hoard the profits for themselves and hoard the patents, for the vaccines. So it's a great example of there's your big pharma corruption. There's your big pharma greed. But it cuts in the opposite way than the one you think it does. It cuts in the way of like, let's only reserve the vaccines for wealthy countries and fuck the poor countries that, are developing. So, yeah, there's a reason why a Bangladeshi farmer hasn't gotten the vaccine, but every living president of the United States has gotten it. Because it works, and because their greed and corruption is making it so that we're trying to prevent the Bangladeshi farmer from getting the vaccine, to protect the patents and to protect the profits for big pharma. So anyway, again, credit to Trump. He should have done it a lot earlier, but it says something, doesn't it, that you had the crowd boo. And there's going to be so many more examples of stories like this now, because it's been enough time, at least in the U.S., where you could have gotten the vaccine if you wanted the vaccine. And so anybody who ends up getting sick and going to the hospital, they are probably going to feel like, fuck, I should have gotten the vaccine. And I want them to avoid that horrendous, catastrophic moment and feeling. And there's an easy way to do it. Go get vaccinated now. I hope this changes even one person's mind. Would be great. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.